Great. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another exciting time. I guess the first thing on the agenda is public comment, but is there anyone to comment? Not tonight? All right. I think there have been some update to budget documents that were passed around. I saw there's a new one passed around for the Assessors Budget, which we'll get to in a minute. And I sent around some copies of minutes, which we'll get to later. So why don't we get started? Town Hall 1, we might as well do these in order, okay, if that's okay. Town Hall 1, do you have the budget for town meeting and reports, 113?
Budget 113. It's a level funded budget of $15,908. This budget supports two main components. First is the preparation and the printing of our, and I would like to say our award-winning annual report.
Who gives that award? I think the state did, yes, we have gotten an award.
And then despite, again, we have done some reduction in printing, but this has been over previous years, so this number is kind of, is the same that we've seen and don't anticipate any further reduction. Secondly, it's the part-time salaries for the cost of running our town meeting. Subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor.
Great, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Second.
Great, everybody in favor, or all in favor? 9 in favor, any opposed, any abstentions? 9-0-0. All right, so we move on to the assessors budget, number 141.
Number 141. There was a minor change, which we noticed during our subcommittee meeting. And I just sent out a complete report, but it was only really 2 pages. The cover page did not reflect the, I believe it was the part-time salary on the front. The correct number was in the back for other salaries. It was always the right number, but it didn't transpose on the first page. So you just have a new report. So instead of it on the cover page, the first one was 1.1% increase. This is a 1.21% increase, but same numbers as you saw in the original budget. So this we went through, line by line. The salary line item reflects a transitional advisor stipend for Jim. Jim has indicated his plan on giving notice at some point in the next few years. 3 years, within 3 years. And this is, the transitional stipend is what we have seen as part of other key personnel that have it within their agreement. This transition stipend, Jim has elected to take this year. It's a stipend that runs for 18 months and provides training and assistance for hiring replacement. So again, no announcement yet, but that's in this year's budget. Other than that, there was one employee that had a step increase. Material supplies, capital outlay, melt were up slightly, but that was really just a factor of some increased costs, which we went through. Contracted services are down. Jim is in the process of negotiating a new contract with Patriot or whoever. I assume it would be Patriot, but and that's, as we've seen before, is going to be a 9-year contract. That would need to be approved by town meeting, but that has not been finalized. From what he's negotiated, there still may be a little bit of discounting to this budget, but he's put it at a number that he feels comfortable that he can support going forward with that. So there's a large reduction in that, mainly because of we now have some in-house personnel that they were able to do some of the data entry and whatever, what we used to contract that out. So we are going to see a reduction, obviously, in that contracted services. Also, the Department of Revenue has kind of relaxed their evaluation cycles, which used to be every 3 years, and now it's every 5 years. So that will help as far as the number of properties they need to look at. So we continued Jim continues to have the mapping services line item within this budget. And if you remember when we spoke to Amy Warfield, and whether Frank wants to talk about this a little bit, we did talk that we do feel strongly that this mapping service needs to be under the direction of someone, one department and one department head, and it's kind of mishmashed between different areas. So we expect to see that next year, but for right now, it's what we have seen in the past.
So if I could, David, just
Sure.
interrupt you here to add to that. So I had spoken briefly to Paul Sagarino about it, and Jim has let me know tonight that he put together some more information. They initiated a first get-together of, I don't know, about 4 or 5 people, Paul leading the charge, and they're now working through what it would take to consolidate all of that. It may or may not be in this budget next year, but at some point it'll move to what department owns it. We don't know who that will be at this point, but they are working on it, so they have started meetings. That's a good thing. I don't think it's going to affect the cost particularly. It might, but that's not the issue.
And is only part of the cost in this budget, or is it there bits of it
This is to
sprinkled
pay,
around?
Jim can tell you more, but he actually brings someone in to do entry work into the GIS and to maintain it.
Okay.
Somebody's going to have to do the equivalent of that work, whether it's an internal employee and it could come out of duties that are there, or they do something like this, we don't know. But the point is, there's no one department that owns it, and that's the real problem. And it's not really necessarily a dollar reduction activity, from my point of view. And Jim will probably speak on this a little bit more when he gets his shot here.
David, anything else?
Other than that, subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor of supporting the budget.
Welcome, Jim. Doherty,
Thank
you
you.
got anything to add?
Always great to be back. Just to pick up, I guess, where Frank left off, I don't think there will be a huge money savings in terms of decrease, but I don't know that yet because it's going to be similar to 7 years ago when they decided to take all the funds from various IT accounts and individual budgets and try to move them in. So I don't know what else is out there. I know Amy does have some. I know planning has some. I think Tom over in engineering has some. Clearly, we have some. You're not going to solve any unforeseen budget issues with it, but me personally, I think there will be some savings there. Just to put any fears to rest that anybody's going to come and tell you next year you need a full-time GIS person. That's abundantly clear to all parties that that's not the case. And it would probably be someone absorbing the work, if you will. It's still, by and large, is going to be done by a third party. I don't want to get into a big GIS discussion, but basically the bottom line is, as I think everybody knows who used GIS before, that basically the maps are the baseline. And then all data goes in on top of that, whether it's dog licenses, handgun licenses, precinct maps, water lines, different things like that, and there's different levels of access, just like on pretty much a lot of databases where probably no water infrastructure supply or anything like that would be made available for anyone, obviously, just to go on and tap into that. Probably same with handgun licenses or dog licenses or other things like that different departments can use. So at some point, when we actually just get GIS kind of all in one category, I think at that point, there may be a discussion where the community wants to take it in the future, how fast you want to get there. We're going to bring various users in to get an understanding of what they'd like to see. And my recommendation to the group today is, don't build your org chart till you get that input first, and then, let that drive the org chart versus making an org chart and then finding out you have all these different other things going on you're unaware of. So I think Frank's done a tremendous job. I'll be very honest with you, beating the drum on this for me, Frank. Thank you very much.
No charge.
For the last few years, and I'm sorry to bring it up, but I think this town does, you know, 99% of the things really great and, you know, best practices, and I just think this is, you know, it's not glamorous, you know, nobody really sees it, but I think they're, for the public, I think it's really good to put this together because people will enjoy what's out there, and I think from a business flow internally, it will be a good thing to get going, so. Unless
Great.
anybody wants to talk about GIS, that's all I really want to talk about.
I think maybe the budget here, but,
Yeah, there you go.
questions, anyone?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor? 6. Any opposed? Abstaining? 0.
Thank you very
Jim.
much, appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, public safety. Next one up on the list is the police, Department 210, or budget line item 210. Welcome, gentlemen.
For those of you who don't know, Deputy Chief Tom Brown.
Great. Brad, you up for this?
Well, Mike was not able to attend tonight, so I appreciate him putting his faith in the junior member of the committee to present the budgets this evening. So we talked with Chief Kent last week, and he was kind enough to give a nice summary on the budget here, so it's my cheat sheet. The short story on the presentation is the police budget is we're looking at an increase of 0.12%, and that's well within guidelines. So I'll jump to the ending. Mike and I voted 2-0 to support. So just to go into a few of the details. So again, so at some level, the 0.12% is a little bit artificial because, again, this doesn't capture any of the cost of living increases that'll be negotiated come July 1. But that's still a very good number, and thank you. But very close to level funding, as we discussed, so. So just running down the budget quickly. Again, salaries do not contain the cost of living increase. Overtime and traffic supervisor numbers, again, the adjustments are in the noise. We have animal control level funded. Let's see. Materials and supplies are up a little bit. The chief showed us the new tactical medical kits that they'll be making use of. I don't know if you're going to do a demonstration tonight, Chief, but occupancy is up as the number modeled by John Sanchez. Capital outlay is up a bit just to capture the increased cost on the cruisers. Again, they're purchasing 3 cruisers each year in their budget, as we have discussed over the years. On contracted services, it's up just about 12%, so or about $14,000. So this increase is due to the purchase of a detailed tracking system, separate from any of the GIS software, separate from Munis. So this system allows for greater efficiency in scheduling and filling details, tracking and accounting of details, and most importantly, collecting monies owed to the town. MELT is level funded, special accounts up 0.72%. This is entirely due to an increase in the required academy clothing. And again, as I said, the chief did a great job. It's almost level funded, and again, the subcommittee voted to support.
Okay. Chief, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Brad did a good job summarizing, it's, despite the fact it's a very tiny increase, it is a workable budget. We have some things in there that we need that are being funded. He talked about the tactical medical kit, which is, we have 2 currently, and we're hoping to buy 3 or 4 more to deploy in the first-line cruisers. Should we have a catastrophic incident, this will have the life-saving things that the officers can strap right on and bring in. So I tip my hat to our firearms team that researched that, and they put a lot of thought into anything they buy, and I know other departments are following, but once again, I think due to the personnel we have, we're kind of on the cutting edge with that. Cruiser increase, we haven't had an increase in 5 years. So that's, everyone knows the price is going up. We replace 3 a year. We replace them on mileage. You know, they start getting close to 100,000 miles or more, just the way they're driven. They're basically used up their lifetime at that point. And the detailed tracking system has really improved our ability to collect the monies owed to the town. If you recall, 4 or 5 years ago, the audit was done within the town, and one of the things they pointed to was police details and how we had to come up with a better system to track. So this has really given us phenomenal results in our collections and also our scheduling, things of that nature to make it more streamlined. But the biggest piece for me would be the collection, and it's really worked out well. So those are the big pieces. And another piece, the only other piece of this budget is, in keeping with our 5-year plan to add an officer every year, that officer is in here, but it's only funded for 6 months. So look at that to be starting, provided it gets approved in January. So that's skinny.
All right. Questions, anyone? John?
Just sort of wanted to understand, and this may be a question for Brad or you. I'm just curious to understand the process for the salaries. If I understand correctly, if a department's in its last year or past its last year of contract, then the salaries are assumed to be level for the next year, and then whatever increase will come out of negotiated settlements. Is that correct?
I think it's level, except we include steps are included in the budgets, but not cost of living.
Okay, so there's no allocation for any COLA,
Correct.
sort of as a predictive thing?
Right.
Okay. All right, and then just one question for Chief, kind of if I could. How many cruisers are there in the department?
22, I believe, is our count.
Okay, so it's averaging about 7 years then, does that imply? Or okay, great, thanks.
I think David had a question.
Just a
Oh,
quick
yeah,
follow-up.
follow-up.
Yeah, and actually, so all the contracts are up. So as you're looking over budgets this season, you might want to do just a quick calculation, model a raise to kind of see what the end of the year increase in the budget's actually going to be. And I'm not sure if either one of us said this, but the additional officer, this is the 4th of the 5 years for that plan. So, thank you.
Did you have a question, David?
So then, Chief, just from a big picture sense, where this budget includes a new officer for 6 months.
Correct.
Yes, it doesn't have any COLA, but it does include steps in your normal process. Have you
Yeah.
had retirement? So basically, it's level funded. So you have a new officer, you have steps, and you're level funding.
Right.
How is that?
How is that? So, yeah, how does that happen? Have you had a number of higher paying
Yes.
officers that have
Yeah.
retired, and now so you've had savings from that, and that's what made up for the steps in the new officer this year?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the new officer funded for 6 months, that pay is, his pay is significantly less than the officers who replace him, who were senior officers.
Okay. You were adding an officer, not just replacing the officer, you were on top of it, so
And then we've had a couple other hires since then, so you got a lower,
lower pace.
those number 66, 67, and 68 are making a lot less than the ones that left that were higher up.
Got it. Yep.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I'm just wondering, with the violence that's been happening lately in schools and in houses of worship, how is that affecting the challenges of your job and the training budget?
We're fortunate, and I always point to, we do a lot of training in town, and again, I will point back to our, basically, Lieutenant Mills, Lieutenant McDonough, and Lieutenant Hannafin are on the constantly reading, evolving in our training. So just recently, we, last week or the week before, we held a one-day. The school was nice enough to give us one of their professional days, and we brought in 2 speakers, a mother from Sandy Hook and the principal from Columbine High. When we had all the teachers there together to cover the points, maybe the Sandy Hook, you know, not to criticize, but what could have been done different. The Columbine principal, who's recently retired, and they're both phenomenal speakers. So from that end, we try and work very closely with the schools. We've brought in a program called a Standard Response Protocol, which not only the schools, but it can cover the private businesses too, should there be an issue, and not, it can even be a natural disaster. This will cover it. The houses of worship, the rabbi actually called me on my way here on my cell phone regarding an issue that coming up on Friday that she felt I should be aware of. So we have very tight communication with them. And one thing we do, we do it at the schools, what's called a park and walk. So anytime an officer during the course of his shift can go to the high school park, go in, touch base in the office, do a walk around the school. We do it with all the schools. And the thinking behind that is, you know, we're always thinking worst case scenario, but let's say it's some father who's going through a nasty divorce and he's decided he's gonna go in there and maybe, you know, take his daughter somewhere. Maybe if he pulls into that school and he sees the marked cruiser there, he'll have a moment of clarity and, you know, that'll pass. And, you know, we'll never know what was avoided because of that. And we do the same thing with the houses of worship. All 3 shifts are constantly in and out of those buildings, checking them, logging them. We have a great dialogue with the interfaith clergy. So if anything's on the horizon I think they need to be aware of, I can basically call one person who gets it out to all of them, and vice versa. They can funnel it back, either call me direct or funnel it through one person, if that answers your question.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there, I guess what I'm trying to say is, with all that pressure coming on your department to try to resolve those situations, is it causing any concern for you that you don't have enough in your budget for training?
No, I'm satisfied with this, and actually, I should have said, there's been a lot of, obviously, some very recent incidents, but this is something, if you go back in our history, you know, the last 6-7 years, we've been, again, because of my personnel, I think, people like Tom here, we've been ahead of the curve practicing training. So the training we're doing, we've been doing all along, and I'm very proud of that fact. So that's the long answer to, I think this is a sufficient training budget, and I do appreciate it because it gives us the opportunity to do a lot of different things.
Thank you.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 things, Chief. First, just a quick update on the TASER program. They're in full use, fully integrated now?
No, they're not integrated yet. We had to wait to settle the patrol contract because it's a bargainable issue. And the command contract is in process right now. And we're waiting to purchase them because they come with actually a tremendous warranty. After 5 years, they get replaced. But the minute you purchase them, the clock starts ticking. So I want to make sure, literally repurchase them on a Monday, and we're starting our training the following Monday. So that warranty is as long as possible. So
the money's there.
Money, the
purchases
warrant
are
article's
happening,
there.
You're working through.
we've got our trainers trained. We're just working through one more contract to try and get that resolved, and hopefully sooner than later.
Okay, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, so segue right into that, I'm getting a heck of an echo here, is it me? The warrant, so on salaries, the warrant article, this might be for Paul, that's listed for FY '19 is the 3 million under full-time. So is that the increases that came through with all the back contracts that were selling?
Uh,
So in the full-time,
I don't know where it's at.
What are you looking
I'm
at?
sorry, no, it's not 3
Warrants are
million,
here.
it's
half a million,
592,000
Okay, fine.
I was gonna say, 3 million's a bit steep there.
for the contract.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're in a command and patrol renegotiation for maybe a 3-year contract, and that's just beginning or in process? Just at the beginning. And this 592, did that reflect multiple years of back pay?
Yes.
Roughly, what are you expecting for 1 year when the contract is settled? A 2.5 basis, or?
You mean the next one that they haven't
Yeah.
talked about yet?
Right. No, but I mean, we have to have some idea here. So in your negotiated settlements, you're looking at funding the first year of a 3-year command and patrolmen's when settled.
Yes.
That's where you're at.
Correct.
Okay. And are the tasers part of that negotiation?
They are with the command unit.
Okay.
It's a bargainable issue, so you need to bargain it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? I've got a quick one. So you mentioned the tactical medical kits. Do they include perishables? So they have to be replaced?
No, gauze, combat gauze, tourniquets, that type of thing. And they found in I think it was the Parkland shooting,
Yeah,
this is the thing that the officers, if they're going into a serious incident, I'm taking the worst case scenario, and it goes on like a backpack. And if you have people on the ground and there's other people there, or the person doesn't have a life threat, they actually have individual packets, so as you're going through, boom, boom, boom. And you can take care of the person that's there, or take care of yourself if you're not terribly wounded. But they can also be used at, 2 o'clock in the morning, when a car of 4 hits a tree, and you've only got a small number of officers working, and saying neighbors are coming out to help in that instance too, so.
Yep. And I know it's commendable that many of the police officers are EMT qualified,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, our guys are very, very good. A lot of saves at the end of the year with defibrillators and CPR. They're excellent at that.
Great. Anything, Doug?
I just have a quick kudos. I had a chance to meet a chief from another town that I think most people in Burlington would look at that town and say, wow, it's a nice town. And he asked me where I lived, and I said Burlington, and without me asking or anything, the thing he said was, you guys, nobody does training better than Burlington.
Wow.
You guys have got it down. Excellent, excellent.
Nice to hear. And again, that goes back to, you people, town meeting, the select board, the town administrator funding us, and we appreciate it. And I got great guys that, as I say, they're always reading. We're on the cutting edge, and we've got some excellent people in our department.
One of the line item I'm curious about, just briefly, is this line item for NEMLIC.
Yeah.
What kinds of things do we support in NEMLIC with the
So
funds?
NIMLAC, which, full disclosure, I must have been the new chief on the block. I'm the treasurer, so
Drew the short straw on that one, Chief.
the one position that get you in trouble, they reach out and have me do it. But I've been the treasurer for 5 or 6 years. So NIMLAC consists of a SWAT team. As a matter of fact, today they were training at the old Chili's building. The management of that building offered it to them, and they were using it for, scenarios if you had something happen in the restaurant bar area. So they were over there all day. It's got a regional response team, which, if you had a missing person or something of that nature, you could call them out, and within a few hours, you'd have 100 cops here. They have a school threat assessment team, which is called STARS, which is a multidiscipline, police, teachers, psychologists. If you have an incident, a child or a teacher dies, they need counselors there the next morning. You get a credible threat, you need metal detectors. They have portable metal detectors they can bring in, things of that nature. And we have a motor unit. We don't have a motorcycle, but we have a motor unit also. So the best case scenario I can give you for NIMLAC is what happened right up in Lawrence about 6 months ago when they had that gas main. The chief from Lawrence will tell you that they could not have survived without the NIMLAC units up there to help. And that's a good example because, that's probably something that could happen in a lot of towns. And, they were they were up there for about 10 days and, you know, took care of that city and the other 2 surrounding towns also, so.
Great, thanks. Tom?
Chief, for those who are watching on TV, could you tell us what NIMLAC stands for?
Northeastern Law Enforcement Council. And Burlington was actually, there's 64 communities in it. We've always been on the cutting edge, I guess. We were one of the original 5. So back over 50 years ago, whoever was the chief then had a lot of vision to get us involved in it.
All right, if there's nothing else,
Make a motion to approve?
motion?
Second?
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? 10-0-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
All right, you want to press on, Brad, to fire? Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
So again, Mike and I met with the chief and the assistant chief last week. They're presenting a budget to us this evening with an increase of 1.91%. We'll delve into the budget in a minute, but Mike and I did vote 2-0 to support. So if you go to the main sheet here, again, the full-time salaries are only up 0.14%, again, because of the contract issue. A line item that we actually discussed for some time is the overtime line item. The chief had requested 17% on this number, and after discussions with the administration, this was brought down to 12%. Again, with overtime, there's a known component and there's an unknown component. The known component is vacations and leave and such, and you can model that to probably to the penny. The other is leave due to injuries, so you have to model that number. The chief was being conservative on that. Again, had given an initial increase of about 17%. By bringing that in about $50,000, that brings it down to about 12, which still gives room for injuries and such. Just kind of tightens that number up a little bit, and it's still a 12% increase. So there we are. So again, overall salaries up 1.38%. So, man, I've got terrible handwriting, you guys. Contracted, let's see, materials and supplies were up just 2%. On contracted services, so this was a long discussion. So there's a line for $7,000 on maintaining the information in their data management system. Now, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, the year before you got $24,000 for the actual software system itself.
You bought, no, through a grant. Mike actually got something through a grant.
But it was a previously purchased computer system, and the $7,000 is on the maintenance and managing that system. So again, this is fire reporting, tracking records. Oh, yeah, here's the note. Yeah, paid for by a grant. So again, we discussed, you know, how much can you unify software and how much is department specific. And again, this is another instance of this is very department specific. And this is software written specifically for fire departments. And again, this system will be in place for both the current fire station and the new one coming online. And speaking of the new fire station, when you get to the occupancy number, that number is up 38%. Again, the chief will give us a status update on when Station 2 will be coming online. This is a little bit of a guess, but they've modeled, just given the square footage, they've modeled how much electricity and such that'll take. And so that's an increase of 38%. Capital outlay, get in 10 sets of gear each year on a regular basis. Melt, there's no increase. And there was nothing of particular note on the special accounts, but we'll let the chief comment if I've missed something obvious in here. But again, it's still coming in close to 2% without the budget increase, but again, this is taking into account the support on the new station. And again, Mike and I voted 2-0 to support.
All right, thanks. Chief, do you have anything to add or expand on?
I think Brad did an excellent job. Again, a little more of an explanation on overtime. The way our department is set up is we have a maximum and a minimum, and it's a two-person gap per shift. Voted to approve our expansion of our department in 2016. We added one person the first year, daytime position, 4 firefighters the second year, 4 firefighters the third year. We're still having difficulty filling those positions. We actually hired the last two, which will start the academy in October. However, I've had a guy lateral transfer out of, actually I've had two and about to get a third lateral transfer out of town. We're gonna have vacancies, and if I don't have that gap, if I don't have a two-person cushion, now I have a one-person cushion. In fact, one shift right now, I'm placing man for man. So it's not just the injuries, it's the vacancies, and I'm gonna have vacancies for the foreseeable future. Not only are we short two right now, I've got another one in the pipeline, and I've also got 3 retirements in the next fiscal year. It takes a long time to fill a vacancy. We have to apply to civil service, get a list, people come in, we interview them, we go through a background process. The wait time for the fire academy right now is 9 months.
Wow.
That's not, that's their first day of employment for us is when they graduate the academy. Their first day of employment is when they start the academy, and then, they come back after 10 weeks, do 2 weeks of days, and then they go out in the streets. So the kids I've hired now that don't start until October, they're not gonna be boots on the street until February. So I have this vacancy problem.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a follow-up to that? So Chief, it's not a lack of interest in being a firefighter, it's the wait time on the academy, is that?
You tend, and yes and all across.
Yes.
But especially police and fire are kind of hitting these bulbs.
Yes.
And we're going to lose upwards of 30% of my department in the next 3 to 5 years, just because of the age and guys get time on.
Right.
They're
Interesting.
approaching the end of their careers.
We hire two, we lose one to retirement.
Exactly,
We hire
right.
another one, we lose another one to a transfer. So it's going to be like this for the next 3 to 5 years.
And there's no, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on that, the academy is the academy, right? So it's not like you can expand on that to shorten that
Well,
time.
we're trying to address this. We're part of Metro Fire. We're trying to address this. We also have the Mass Fire Academy in Stowe. They did open one in Springfield, but that's not a full-time academy, and that's really only designed to handle the western part of the state. They'll be opening a third academy in Bridgewater, but that's not until 2020. We are in negotiations with Boston Fire to maybe run an academy through Boston Fire Department, but specifically for Metro Fire. And they could take 60 firefighters. That may happen in June or July. We're still in negotiations on that. We're also in negotiations with Brookline Fire, because they run their own academy. So we are looking at options. Worst case scenario, I got these 2 guys in October that won't be on, but that's the worst case scenario.
Wow. Just a second, Tom. Is there anything else you want to expand upon?
Well, again,
You got the floor.
that's the vacancy problem and injuries. I've had one firefighter that's been out 10 months. Just had one that just came back after 5 months. I have one that's scheduled for surgery next week. And I have one that is going for his MRI tonight.
Okay. Questions? Tom?
Chief, one of the local television stadiums, their investigative reports, did a special for a couple of nights on the on the equipment that firefighters are using. Supposedly, it's, they're suspecting it causes cancer. Have you guys looked at that at all?
Well, we've been addressing our safety for quite a period of time. We're, again, like the police department, we're ahead of the curve. Every firefighter that we have has 2 sets of gear. So they have their primary set that they wear out on a call. If they get contaminated either at an accident or a structure fire or a chemical spill or something like that, they come back, they decon, they gross decon in the field, they come back, they decon, they take their gear and get that washed and put their secondary gear in the truck, and then they go up and take a shower. Plus the equipment we're buying, trying to buy the best equipment we can. We just bought new hoods 2 years ago, and everybody has 2 sets of those too, so.
You know, that piece, Tom, that you're referring to, they were actually talking about products that were in structural firefighting gear that were, they're looking into whether they were carcinogens. And, you know, that's a pretty scary thought. We're in close communication with our vendors of our structural firefighting gear. I mean, that's relatively new information, and, you know, absolutely we're keeping an eye on it. I mean, you think about it, that piece, how that would affect the fire service in general, you know, when you're being told that your protective gear could lead to sickness and injury. I mean, it's unbelievable.
All right, David, I think you're next.
This may, I don't understand the hiring process in the fire department, so this may be a real elementary question, but if the holdup is in the academy, for the, you know, as far as, can you hire seasoned personnel? In other words, go to another town that may want to be attracted to Burlington?
We're all in the same boat, that's the problem. First of all, there's a shortage of firefighters. There is a shortage of firefighters.
Sure.
They just gave a civil service exam this past March. They had 4,200 people take the exam. They usually have 11,000. So only 4,200 people took it. Only 200 of those are medics. So there's a small pool. I mean, Winchester Fire is down 15 positions. I mean, we're not, it's not just us, it's everybody.
Well, sure, but we are looking for, in essence, our hiring is for newbies. It isn't,
right.
it isn't,
If people express an interest and want to lateral to Burlington, we certainly will take a look at them.
I mean, there are some fire departments in the state that actively recruit lateral transfers. And that's something that may be worth a discussion, for sure.
Frank?
And more on the hiring. So we require that they're, I don't know if it's EMT qualified or even higher.
Right
So,
now,
right,
historically, we've
But now,
required
right now.
the emergency medical technician. Because we are trying to go ALS, we're in
Right.
negotiations to go ALS right now, we've been hiring medics. We've hired 12 medics.
Okay.
So going forward, we're trying, because we've got to get to a certain point before we can actually.
I understand. I'm just wondering, oh, God, that's maddening. It completely distracts me. What if we hired individuals that are not medics when we hire and we train them? We send them.
That's a year. It's a year of schooling. So you have
But
to
they
pay for
could-
their school at, is it 10,000
It's probably anywhere between 12 and 14,000.
per guy?
Well, I'm not gonna try to think this through here, but this sounds like more than just a little bit of a problem. Sounds like a pretty big problem to me.
But it's across the fire service, it's not just.
Yeah, I know, but,
I mean, given the dollar value on the overtime pool, it seems like you could spend money, I don't know, I'm sure you've thought this through. Maybe other places you can spend money to help fill it in a different way, but
okay,
that's a
thank you.
lot of overtime,
Yeah.
It is.
a lot of overtime money that seems needed. Questions, anyone else?
No, but I think it's important to say on record too that, I don't know, it's not just the overtime issue. I think if I'm hearing the chief right, it's obviously, it's across the board in the Commonwealth, so there's got to be maybe some more creative thinking there. But even just for the guys on, I mean, you're looking at, if you have to run at a minimum, is it 9, chief?
Actually, our
11?
minimum's 12 right now.
12, so, you know, you're taxing in every community, it sounds like you're taxing these guys to work multiple hours and that's even a challenge just in the world of public safety, right? So it's not only a money issue, but a public safety issue, but it'd be interesting to see if hopefully Boston or Brookline will help out a little bit with the academy, because I think that's where the tricky part is. We can maybe attract from others on the lateral spot, but it doesn't sound like you could attract. Look at Winchester, for example. There isn't a day in the world they could attract 15, you know what I mean? And then that means the community around them's down by the ones that they take, so
You know, and the
it's
other
a
problem,
two-part.
the other problem is we're all trying to grab the same candidates.
Right.
So it just makes things more difficult.
And I guess we don't need to beat this down to a pulp, but I'm out of curiosity at this point. Starting salaries, Chief, are they all around the same community to community, or are they vastly different?
No, they're not vastly different. They're relatively close.
Okay, just curious.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? 9-0. Tom, I'm going to count you as abstaining.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I think, Brad, you mentioned briefly an update on the fire station. Do you want to give us the 3-minute version of how Fire Station 2 is coming?
Okay, we started, this was a project of construction of about 14 months. In that 14 months, we've only moved the finish date by a week. So that's all we've lost. Substantial completion date was the last week in April. It is now the first week in May. That's substantial completion. There'll still be a punch list to do. I'm assuming we're gonna be moving in maybe the first week in June. It's very, very close. I mean, they're tiling the lobby floor this morning. They've already tiled the kitchen floor. They put the appliances in. We're moving along quickly, very quickly. They'll start outside landscaping within 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Moving along.
You going to give tours?
Yes, we will get.
No donuts.
Bring your own, huh? Okay, shall we press on? I think we got one more budget here with emergency management, right?
Yes.
91.
So this is level funded at $23,600. So I have to admit, this is the first year I actually gave some more thought of what this actually means. So this is not, so this is, there are other agencies, so there are different scales of emergencies. And there are different agencies that deal with the various scales. This emergency management deals with situations where perhaps there's a house fire, or I believe we had a fire in one of the apartment complexes, and a number of people needed some temporary shelter and cots and such. So it's really aimed at dealing with emergencies that require supplies for a few days and maybe a few dozen people. I think I've got the scope about right. So right now, it's just making sure, this budget is making sure that we have the supplies to deal with that. Assistant Chief Patterson was telling us that we've pretty much, we've stocked up on, this is gonna go toward, again, more cots and more tents, but we are close to having what we need, and so next year, we'll be looking at using the funds for perhaps other items and such. They're just talking about the emergency needs in town. They pointed out that at the rebuild on the Human Services building, they do have a generator over at that building, and so people will be able to go there in case of power outage. Tom, you're asking about pairing with perhaps grocery stores or businesses in town. They shared with us that Wegmans is actually a very good partner. In fact, they have a generator as well, so they can serve in that capacity, and they've been generous with food donations and such. In fact, I believe they helped out with the gas explosion issue, so they've been a good partner. So again, the budget is $23,600, level funded. Mike and I voted 2-0 to support.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, again, prior history is we used to use the high school and the Human Services building as shelters. They really weren't operational shelters. We used them, but that's all we had at the time. So now that the Human Services Building is redone, we have 100% power. We have the capability of using the Murray Kelly wing and the gym as sheltering areas. Mike's been purchasing all the equipment over the last several years. You know, we have a couple of trailers that mimic each other. You know, we're ready to go if there's something bad. Oh, we also have supplies stocked at the center school with the old Human Services Building.
We work pretty closely with the Board of Health. Our medical corps people are going to be the people that actually staff shelters. So during the course of the year, we do trainings with the medical reserve people and the Board of Health. So in the event we ever have to activate or open a shelter, hopefully we'll be able to do it.
Right? Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if we had a bad disaster in this town of any type, and we needed to shelter a great majority of people, what would be the limit that we could probably handle, do you think?
So that's one of our big problems, Tom. The Human Resources Building is a fairly small type building. So we may be looking at a potential of maybe 200 to shelter. That's problematic.
Are you looking at all to try to increase that?
It's all based on, individual space for when you set up cots. There's so many square feet that have to be met, and it's the spaces. We came up with a plan of how we're gonna lay out cots and set up different rooms for animals, and so we've done all that work. But like I said, we're limited by the space itself. So for us to say that we could, open up a shelter for 600 people is probably gonna be unrealistic.
Do we have an opportunity to be able to utilize another town? I mean, and get help from them?
So in the big picture is if the town's shelter becomes full to capacity, that's when we have to seek assistance through MEMA, the state, for regional type sheltering.
On the bigger events, Tom, like blizzards and stuff like that, they do regional shelters.
You good, Tom?
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Doug?
So the reason we can't use the high school, which would be a much bigger space, is they don't have a generator, they don't have.
So they do have a generator, but the problem with the generator is it only provides emergency power, meaning, emergency lighting in the gymnasiums, bathrooms. To run a
Sure.
shelter, you need basically full electrical
Yeah,
power.
100% power, and not only that, if you have a generator for 100% power, you have to have the ability to back up that generator. We do have that at the Human Services Building. So you can bring another generator in and plug into that generator and power the building still.
So it seems like as we look at the challenges that the high school is facing and the need for rebuilding, not rebuilding, but it has an overhaul coming one way or the other, however we decide we have to pay for it. That's something we should consider, that maybe we could make the high school a more suitable place. And
Yeah,
that should be
absolutely.
part of the cost in
Or a
that.
piece of it, right?
And we've had that discussions with Bob Kuna,
Yeah.
but absolutely.
We have to do something, and we might as well see if we could work that in.
But standing inside a cold gym beats standing outside in a blizzard every day of the week. I mean, it's nice to have running water and refrigeration and lighting, but,
Cup of coffee.
yeah, all right. Other questions? Oh, I have one. My annual question, so is the stipend adequate? Is it excessive? Do we need to is the job separation clear enough that this, we have to keep doing it the same way we've been doing it?
I feel the stipend is adequate, since I'm the one that's getting it. We do spend a lot of time on emergency management related activities. We attend monthly meetings. It's, a lot of work goes into this. Work closely with all the other departments.
We're part of
So-
a regional group also, that meetings with them. There's
We,
22 towns in our group. 22 towns.
A few years ago, there was a talk about in regard to the emergency management, having some kind of a dispatch center, is there any kind of capability, or just, you know, a room with all the resources in it?
I
It
think,
was a couple
yeah.
of years ago. Has any of that made progress?
So
or-
we have, it's called an emergency operations center. So if something really bad were to occur in this town, we could put together our different departments and utility companies. So we have a room for that very event. It's at the Town Hall Annex in the basement. So, you know, fortunately for us, we use it more for a training room or a meeting room, and we hope it stays that way, but it also has a dual purpose of, if something bad happened, we could use that as a emergency operations center.
And I guess now the police department has a mobile command unit.
They do,
It's not the
yes.
same
Yep.
function.
That's gonna be more of an on-scene piece of equipment, where people working in an emergency operations center are just supporting what's going on in the field. You know, bringing in resources if needed.
All right, thanks. Tom, you had a follow-up?
Yeah. So if something does happen and you need to utilize a shelter, so who's gonna be the people that are gonna be actually setting up, you know, getting the cots and all that? Would that be other firefighters, or would that be town employees?
It's most likely gonna be the volunteers on the Medical Reserve Corps. We had that discussion, you know, just last week, that they have a large pool of people, and the last drill that we did, a year and a half ago, we utilized members of the Reserve Corps to actually set up. You know, like I said, we have kind of a blueprint of where we need to set stuff up. We have the equipment, we just need the bodies to set the stuff up. Unfortunately for us, is that when bad things occur, we're gonna most likely be out of the field, so that's what we have to rely
But
on.
we do have an emergency response group, town administrator, selectmen, building department, board of health, us, police. So, again, Mike's right, you know, the police chief, fire chief, assistant chief, but we also have other people, board of health director, COA director, that can come back here and man the emergency operations center, or, you know, if we had to run a shelter to get us up and running. I mean, Mike's a certified shelter manager, I am, Mark McDonald is, Sula Monello is, so we have the resources.
Follow-up, Mr.
In
Chairman?
a small town like Burlington, unfortunately, we all wear multiple hats. And, you know, a lot of the same people do the same thing, but
So if the emergency situation does occur and your services are needed, both of you say, would you just, Chief, would you just get him out of the scene, take over, and let him run the emergency situation for the shelter or whatever needed?
It's event dependent, Tom. It depends upon what it is, you know? I mean, again, there's no black and white here. It's what the event, what's the resources we need, can we free up people to go do something else?
So I guess my question is, so if an emergency happens and stuff needs to be done immediately, you will make the decision, Chief, as who's gonna be the person responsible for taking care of the housing or whatever it needs, the shelter or whatever it is, okay.
I'm the guy.
Okay. You're the guy, all right,
Guy.
all right.
I mean, it is kind of a team effort, because we are in constant communication with the town administrator and Board of Health Director, COA, so.
But if there's a disagreement, the ultimate decision is made by the chief. Okay.
Great. Any other questions? If not,
Motion to approve.
Second.
more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? 901. Brad, was there a subcommittee vote on that? I imagine there was.
2-0, yes.
Zero. All right, sorry. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't think there's anything else budget-wise on the agenda. I sent around some minutes, if people had a chance for March 6th. There was a little bit of email about some updates to them. Are there other comments or corrections? A correction that got sent around was about being specific about the central administration line items for Central supplies and central machines, that just the minutes didn't capture those correctly, and I've made notes to reword them, so we get them correctly. Anything else?
And I didn't comment on that, but I agree with David's input on that. He has it correct.
Okay. If there's nothing else?
Yeah, I took a look at it too, and he does have it right.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, could we possibly, if the budgets go through, as we would hope that they will go through, could we get a report from the accounting department of what we would have in stabilization and free cash at our next meeting?
I don't know about
Let's
that.
see,
It's
we have-
coming up. We haven't brought that up with Paul still? He is, okay.
I don't think we've yet had the discussion about the disposition of free cash.
Yeah, I think they're early, but Paul will.
That is coming up. When do you want to talk about that, Paul? Or when does town hall?
Chairman, I'd like to make an announcement that Mr. Monaco was early for his first subcommittee meeting. Unfortunately, he was a week early.
And I'll be late for the next one.
So I believe we had planned to speak to TH1 on that at our upcoming meeting next week. Sort of this is the amount of free cash, these are some options we may consider at the committee level, but in terms of the stabilization fund balance, Tom, we can easily provide that. I mean, it won't change aside from the earnings on it, so.
Still like
we can have that
8.7,
for you.
right?
Pardon me?
Still like 8.7, or is it
Yeah,
plus minus? Yeah.
yes. So,
That's fine. Actually, did we
If I
get,
may, so Tom, is there something you're looking at, the numbers are gonna be the numbers, but are you looking for discussion on distribution, or?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be ready or not for next week. I mean, we're gonna have the discussion Tuesday morning.
Okay.
That's when the meeting that I went to a week early is.
and we can, we can have that discussion here.
right.
But the
It
funding
will be
sources, when we really have the in-depth discussion, is when we start with the warrant and all the monies that are spent during the warrant, and where the free cash is at that point. The other pieces, the stabilization, that number's the number, unless we want to add to it, or.
If you've got any input to it, give us the thought. I mean, we're open for input, but we haven't really talked about it yet.
Motion to
So-
approve the minutes?
Just briefly go back to the minutes.
Motion to approve that.
Second?
Second.
Second. All approved? I'm sorry, all in favor? Opposed, abstaining, 10-0-0 on the minutes from March 6th. Thank you. Schedule-wise, I mean, the original schedule has a meeting next week. Well, we've got 2 more meetings scheduled. Next week is DPW, Rec, Youth and Family Services, Board of Appeals, Conservation, Planning Board, Historical Commission, and we'll run through the accommodated accounts that were not covered in the central admin budget, a couple more. So we'll fill those in, and then April 3rd, hopefully we'll see the school budgets. And then the deadline for the warrant articles is not until next Friday, the 29th, so we'll give a couple of weeks. We might have a week off, but we'll have to schedule another meeting to talk about the warrant articles. And probably in the same context, sort of the overall capital budget, capital plan, just a review of it. And then we should be pretty close to done. I have to make sure we've covered everything, but, so, it's looking good.
Did you say rec? Rec is done, right?
Is Rec and done? No, I'm sorry, just DPW.
DPW, yeah.
Subcommittee is
Right, DPW.
Rec,
the
exactly.
DPW
I was like,
subcommittee.
God, I thought I
No, no,
voted
you
rec.
you did that. I missed it, but
No, no,
that
it's
was my
fine.
fault.
Okay, good. Just making sure I didn't.
Yes.
So Brad, it's you and Micah are on the rec subcommittee?
No.
No.
Sonia and I.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if maybe you guys had a chance to address the issue that came in front of us at the last meeting. Did you have a chance
I
to talk?
wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay.
I thought the action item on that was for them to prepare to go to the Recreation Commission.
No, I know.
So-
I just wondered if they had had any conversations or anything like that.
I had a conversation with Brendan about it. He knows it's coming back to the rec.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Tom. Anything else, or,
Motion to adjourn.
yay, second? All in favor? All right,
Cheerio.
thank you. See you next week.